Let's just assume that's not false advertisement and that USA is a small town in China. How's it going, cheapskates? So, how's it going, YouTube? So I noticed my last eBay review actually did pretty well on the channel, so I figured why not do another one? Mainly because apparently it's a popular subject and I'm pretty frugal. So I figured I have a few more eBay parts laying around, so why not do another benchtop review? This is another Tial knockoff. It's the Tial Q blow-off valve. This one compared to the wastegate is a pretty nice. It's a pretty nice copy. It's a pretty nice counterfeit. When I ordered this, I actually went out of the way and tried to find one that did not have. You can't see. That did not have any of the logos and stuff on it, but apparently it's the one they sent me anyway. So if you're looking for a counterfeit, this guy's pretty nice. You can find them all over eBay. They're about $50. The labeling on it's actually really nice. It's all laser etched. It's not painted on. It's pretty good quality. The machining, very nice. If you want to know how to identify a counterfeit Tial blow-off valve, there's two major things to look for. The first one is this little red gasket in there. I don't know if you can see that from that far away, but anyways, there's a little red O-ring that seals this plunger. And on the actual Tial, you can't see that gasket. It's completely, when the valve is closed, that little O-ring is completely hidden. The other dead giveaway for a counterfeit is the serial number. Every single one of these counterfeits has the exact same serial number, that 07102092. That's printed on every single one of them. They don't have unique identifiers. So it's a good way to determine which one's fake. So basically what comes in the box is you get the blow-off valve, nice little banjo fitting, a couple of copper crush washers. There's a high vacuum spring which is currently installed, and a low vacuum spring, and of course your V-band. And there's a aluminum V-band that mounts on your intake, and then there's a little O-ring that sits in between the unit and the mount. The mount is currently welded onto my intake. So those are the parts. I've obviously had it installed on the car, and it worked pretty well. I'll go ahead and take it apart. So like I said, there's two springs. There's a high vacuum spring and a low vacuum spring. Basically why it comes with two is on some engines that pull really high vacuum at idle, this valve will hang open while you're idling. If you're running like a speed density setup, it's really not that big of a deal. If you're running like a mass airflow sensor and it's before the blow-off valve, it's a huge deal, because then you have unmetered air. Because then you have unmetered air basically leaking into the engine and may give you some problems at idle. So the problem with the heavier spring is that the blow-off valve tends to open a lot later. So you may end up with some compressor surge, or I guess if you're running really low boost, it may not open at all. The heavier spring is also useful for if you're running really, really high boost, over 20 psi, you may have an issue with the lighter spring. The boost pressure inside the manifold actually forcing this open before it's supposed to open. So that's why you would want to run a heavier spring to keep it shut. But like I said, I'm running the heavier spring because my engine pulled a lot of vacuum at idle and it was wide open at idle. I'm running a speed density setup, so it didn't really matter. Engine still ran fine. It's just I just don't like the idea of unfiltered air being able to enter the engine. So I'll go ahead and pull this apart. hold down when I release this because it is under pressure. There we go. So, like I said, I am running the heavier spring. These things, I mean, they're pretty simple. The construction of these things are fairly simple. You just have it, it's exactly like it pretty much works just like the wastegate does. You have a diaphragm, here. You have a lid. This is where your vacuum goes. Once the vacuum gets high enough, you get negative pressure inside of there, and that basically sucks this plunger up and opens the valve. So once you get high enough vacuum, that pretty much just sucks the plunger up and opens the valve. I think the diaphragm's replaceable on this. I'm not sure. I mean, it all looks like it's kind of one piece, so it looks like if you were to try and replace it, you'd have to replace this plunger and everything. And I don't know if any of these parts are compatible with the actual genuine Tial parts like they are with the knockoff wastegates. So just like with the wastegate, whenever you're buying these Chinese parts, do not expect these things to work right out of the box, because much like with my wastegate video, didn't work when I got it. It's not so much that it didn't work. What ended up happening was this little guy, this guide, was cross-threaded in this lid. So it worked once. I applied vacuum to it, and then it just stopped. It just wouldn't hold any vacuum anymore. And upon pulling it apart, this guy just fell right out. It was completely stripped out of this housing. So the way I fixed that, so my knockoff Chinese made in the US blow-off valve blew up on me. This guy kind of just stripped out of the housing. Oh boy. But that little JB well can't fix. And it worked fine after that. I think my case may be a special case of, I don't think they're all going to be bad like that. I may just have bad luck. But in any case, so I mean, yeah, in any case, it's a really good idea to pull these things apart, check them out before you try and run it, because it'll just save you some headache. Even if you don't plan on trying to repair it yourself, you can at least save some time by pulling it apart, seeing that it's broken, and then trying to exchange it and hopefully getting something that actually works. I've never tried exchanging any of these things, so I don't know how well that works. I'd imagine communication probably isn't going to be the best. It's not going to be. You're not going to get Tial customer service. You're going to get some shady character from China that's probably going to blame you for it being broken. So, but yeah, it's a aside from this guy being stripped, it's a pretty quality piece. I mean, it works great. I'll put some video of it working in right here. You should be able to hear that it works pretty well. I was running about 20 psi with it. There was no boost leak. There was a little bit of compressor surge because, like I said, I was running a heavier spring, and we tried cutting a coil off. But yeah, it's pretty decent piece of equipment. I mean, for $50, you can't really beat the price. I mean, the machining on this, it's really good. It's really, I mean, compared to the wastegate This is honestly what made me buy the wastegates. I bought this first, saw that it was pretty good. I was very impressed with how well it was put together, other than this being stripped. But yeah, I can say that the wastegate was fairly disappointing compared to the build quality of this guy. So yeah, and there it is. V-band clamp, not the best quality. It's not as nice as the quick disconnect that comes with the Tial, but it works. So yeah, I don't want to advocate buying counterfeit parts, because it does take money away from the people that actually did the research. At the same time, I have a really hard time spending a crap ton of money on something that I know the markup is absolutely ludicrous on. One of the main reasons why I went with the counterfeit part is so that if in the future when I have the means, my setup would already have the provisions to switch to a genuine part, because these will bolt up to any Tial flange and whatnot, so they are fairly interchangeable. Most of the parts are fairly interchangeable. Also take my experience with a grain of salt, because I only ran this for maybe 1,000 miles before I took it off the car. It's going back on the car, but I had to do a whole engine. I'm in the middle of doing an engine build, so I didn't really get a whole lot of time running the car. So as far as longevity goes, I really have no comment on that. But it does work. It does look good. It's a fairly convincing counterfeit if you're into that sort of thing.